Hey everyone. I previously made a response to people's criticisms of my Men Are Smarter Than Women Deal With It video regarding social intelligence. I basically debunked social intelligence as a factor of intelligence entirely, and basically asserted it's complete bullshit, based entirely on women being women and men wanting to have sex with women and having nothing to do with their intelligence. So, like all things, people don't admit they're wrong and just, say, hey, turd-flinging monkey, you had a really good point. I guess men are smarter than women. They just kind of change the topic. So rather than asserting that women are just as smart as men because of social intelligence or emotional intelligence, now they're just denying the science of sexual dimorphism. They're claiming that sure, men's brains are bigger than women's, but that's just because they're bigger than women anyway. It's all about size, and yeah, they have more gray matter, but women have more white matter, and it doesn't even matter, and there's no intelligence differences. And this is where they make a fatal mistake. They have actually asserted something that can be demonstrably proven or disproven. So let's move forward and disprove this bullshit once and for all. So let's begin with an article written by a woman named Susan Fiske for Stanford University. Now, who is Susan Fiske? Is she some world-renowned doctor? Is she an expert on biology? So according to Susan Fiske's bio, it reads, quote, Susan Fiske's research focus is on how gender stereotypes influence how women and men perceive risk, perform in risky situations, and how others react to their failures as a risky task. Other research areas of interest include social psychology, gender, and academic sociology. End quote. So she's clearly a feminist. Even though she didn't major in gender studies, she's basically taking sociology and basically making it gender studies. And gender studies is part of sociology. I'm not saying it's not. What I'm saying is she's trying to legitimize gender studies by working it into other subjects. And in fact, she's writing for the Clayman Institute for Gender Research at Stanford. So that just gives you a little background on Miss Susan Rebecca Fiske. Let's move to her article, which is all about sexual dimorphism. So the first myth that she busts is that brain size matters. And this really pisses me off. And this is the most common thing I hear in regards to this subject, is people saying that brain size doesn't matter, brain density doesn't matter because of whales and elephants and all this other bullshit, which is completely demonstrably proven false. But let me just read this rebuttal and then I'll respond to it. It says, quote, while men have larger brains on an absolute level, there is no sex differences in brain size once body mass is controlled. The male brain is not proportionally larger than that of the female brain. Men are just physically larger on average. Furthermore, if absolute brain size were all that mattered, whales and elephants, both of which have much larger brains than humans, would outwit men and women. Unquote. Okay, alright, let's just back the truck up and take this one at a time. I'm glad that she actually admits that men have larger brains than women. Many people have trouble admitting that. However, it has nothing to do with size. It has to do with cranial capacity and the sexual dimorphism of the skull. Even when a man and a woman are the same size, a man still has a larger brain. Even children, little boys and little girls who are the same age, the same size, the little boy is going to have a larger brain. It's just part of sexual dimorphism. Now, it's interesting that she talks about body mass and not height. It also factors in weight. Obviously, men weigh more than women because men have more muscle, and muscle weighs more than fat. Whenever you see some feminist article talking about the sexual dimorphism of the brain, and they mention that men don't have larger brains when you factor in weight, you know they're full of shit. Weight has nothing to do with size. Weight is about muscle mass versus fat mass. Women have more fat, men have more muscle. Of course, they're going to weigh more even if they're the same size. What does that have to do with the size of the brain? What does that have to do with sexual dimorphism? If you're sexually dimorphic, it has to do with your skeleton, which has jack shit to do with your muscles. Now, your skeleton has a lot to do with your height. You can't be taller than your skeleton, so that's the important thing. However, when you factor in weight, it's a little trick that these gynocentric scientists do to try to compensate for women's objectively smaller brains, even when they are the same height as a man, by factoring muscle mass. Of course, men, because of testosterone, are going to have muscle. We naturally produce a performance-enhancing drug. Anyway, so men actually do have larger brains than women, even when they're the same height, even when they're the children and haven't even reached puberty yet. Now, the second thing these scientists do to downplay the female's inferior sized brain is they compare it to whales and elephants, saying, well, if brain size was that mattered, why are whales and elephants not as smart as humans? Well, clearly it has something to do with both the neocortex, which I'll get into in a minute, but I also want to talk about the actual percentage of the brain size in comparison to the body size. So a sperm whale has the largest brain in the animal kingdom. The brain weighs 18 pounds, but only makes up 0.02% of total body mass. An elephant's brain weighs 12 pounds, but its brain only makes up 0.1% of its mass. Now a dolphin is pretty good. A dolphin's brain weighs 3.5 pounds and makes up 1.19% of its total body mass. Meanwhile, a human being's brain weighs about 3.1 pounds and makes up 2.1% of total body mass. So it's not just brain size, it's also proportional to the total body mass of the animal. Now some people point out like, well, humans don't even have the greatest proportional body mass relative to their brain size, because what about mice? They have really small bodies and their brains are pretty big in comparison to their bodies. That's true. Now we have to talk about something called the neocortex, which is the part of the brain that makes human beings different from other animals. Now, when you look at a picture of a brain, you see all these wrinkles and ridges and valleys and stuff like that. Those actually increase the area of the neocortex. Animals, very simple mammals like mice, have very smooth neocortexes, whereas the more advanced animals have very wrinkled neocortexes, which increases its area without actually increasing its mass. It's a lot like wrinkling up a piece of paper and making a ball out of it. You can pack more information into a smaller area by squishing it together, which would produce these wrinkles. And to give you an example of how important the neocortex is to the human brain, the neocortex is 76% of the human brain's volume. 76%. When you have a less developed neocortex, like say in a mouse, they're not going to be intelligent. They don't have that sort of development in the neocortex. The neocortex is essential. So you have brain size, you have brain density, and you have the neocortex. You really are left with only humans. Humans have the largest proportional brain to their body mass. They have the neocortex, which makes up 76% of the brain volume. And this is demonstrably proven by looking at what humans do. I mean, I was reading this one article. I really wish I didn't lose it. Maybe I'll look for it again and put it in the comments. But it was talking about the difference in the male brain and the female brain is only about the volume of a bar of soap. And I'm like, only a bar of soap? Can you imagine someone taking an ice cream scoop to your brain, scooping out part of your brain large enough to be a bar of soap? And then you would just be just as smart as you were before. You would suffer no negative consequences for having 10% of your brain removed. I mean, just think about that. Think about how retarded that sounds. And you could see this most acutely with stroke victims. You know, when you have a stroke, even a minor stroke, you could lose a small percentage of your brain function. You could lose your ability to speak, listen, read, write, deal with numbers, understand speech. These are serious problems. Now, women have an inherently smaller brain. They basically have 90% of the capacity of a man. And we're somehow not supposed to believe that this has any effect on their ability to reason. This has no bearing on their intelligence. It's just this random thing that doesn't really matter, and it's only because men are bigger and has nothing to do with anything else, when that's clearly not true. It's demonstrably untrue. So in this blog called the Journal of Feminist Insight, now I don't think this is a real journal or anything, it's just a blog from a feminist. This feminist complains about how the format of the SAT and ACT is sexist. They don't do well when there's an objective right or wrong answer. They do well when they can explain and impress. But in cases where there's an objective right or wrong answer, like a multiple choice test, that's considered sexist because it doesn't play to a woman's strength to manipulate people. In another article titled Gender Bias in College Admissions Test by fairtest.org, it notes that women score 35 points lower than males in math, and 3 points lower in the verbal section. This goes along with the whole IQ testing thing. You know, people respond to my videos saying, well, IQ tests don't measure everything. Like, okay, well, what do you suggest? You suggest that we look at grades when it comes to how girls do homework? They've changed the way grades are given, as I demonstrated in a previous video. Girls are advantaged when it comes to grading. It's only at tests that girls suck. And the reason why they suck is because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They can't copy off their friends. They can't get someone else to do their homework. They have to actually know what the fuck they're talking about. but they get higher grades because they restructured the entire educational system to benefit girls. I like the way Daniel Tosh said it. It really captures what I want to say.
Don't you love it when people in school are like, I'm a bad test taker? You mean you're stupid? Oh, you struggle with that part where we find out what you know? No, I can totally relate. See, because I'm a brilliant painter, minus my god-awful brushstrokes. Oh, how the masterpiece is crystal up here, but once paint hits canvas, I develop Parkinson's.
Now, lastly, I want to point you to an actual academic named Richard Lynn. Now, Richard Lynn is derided. If you just Google his name, you'll see that he's actually labeled as a scientific racist by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, basically what he does is he just isn't afraid to call it like it is. I wanted to get some of his papers, but a lot of them are behind a paywall, but I found one paper from 2011 that isn't behind a paywall. It's called A Longitudinal Study of Sex Differences in Intelligence at Ages 7, 11, and 16. Now, if you saw my previous video, you pretty much know what to expect. So here's the thing, even if you don't like my video, this is an academically sourced, peer-reviewed journal article with numerous citations, like at least 30 citations of previous articles. It uses a wide range of different ways to measure intelligence, not just one IQ test, and then it comes to the same conclusion, that boys, especially after puberty, are smarter than girls. And there's not really a mystery why. It's just due to sexual dimorphism. You shouldn't feel bad about that. It's just the way nature made human beings. So this whole sexual dimorphic denier thing is just really, really fucking stupid. Because the facts are right there. In fact, if you don't believe me, I mean, you can take some measuring tape and just start measuring people's heads. Measure men's heads, measure women's heads, find someone the same height as you, measure their head and see who has a bigger head. I mean, to deny sexual dimorphism, to deny that men are smarter than women, isn't just a rejection of a study here and a study there. It's a rejection of observable reality all around you. You are literally dismissing your own eyes. You're dismissing observable reality. You're saying that all these things that you can see with your eyes and experience every day don't exist, and that only your ideology exists. So if that's what you truly believe, you are insane. You are a certified Looney Tune. So I hope this clears things up. Once again, clearly size matters. If you have these vast differences in the SAT scores, in the IQ tests, in all objective observable testing, anything that isn't subject to gynocentric manipulation demonstrates men are smarter than women. So I'm curious to see what you'll come up with next to somehow deny reality. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.